welcome Ian Moore to Dissonance Sessions. Thank you so much for fitting us into your touring lifestyle.
Glad to do it.
And we want to talk to you about how that is for you and all the work that you do around mental health and wellness for artists. So, first of all, just tell us a little bit about general Ian life. What's it like when you're not making a life on the road?
Oh, off the road. My life is, I just recently quoted Iggy Pop. I had a conversation with him a long time ago, and everything's about balance. And I live such a intense life. So when I'm home, I like quiet. I live in the country. I commune with my animals, and I have a very symbolically breathing in life because my music and my shows are very intense, and so I have to recharge. And I really crave that, and I don't have as much of that right now as I need, but I get it where I can.
So when you're out on the road and you don't have that, how do you find it?
Run, meditate, yoga, quiet, dark, showers, coffee, food, books, anything that's calming.
Mm-hmm. And did you learn that you needed that over time? Or have you been doing it all along?
I think I was energetically more keyed in than most people. But yeah, definitely, when I was a kid, like anyone, you're just like, everything's like, you're just excited. But I learned it pretty quick. I've been pretty self-aware energetically since I was a young musician.
Where'd that come from?
Mentors. I had my family. I grew up around, my dad was a Buddhist scholar, so I was around a lot of that type of thought. But ironically, one of the biggest mentors for me was this very conservative English teacher in middle school who was actually was going to be the teacher that went up with the Challenger.
Oh,
and
wow.
They chose a woman, and he was really pissed because I think he felt better qualified. Anyhow, he was just a great role model, and he would always tell me, if you, I think he understood I was going to become an artist, even at 12, 13. I thought it was going to be like a football player. But he would always tell me, if you really crave this mental acuity, you need to do the same with your body. You need to take care of your body. Your body will serve your mind. And so you have to have a balance of the two, which is completely true. I just think quiet. I have my pets. I have a dog that I'm in love with. Sometimes I'm more worried about him than my wife, and I love my wife a lot. We have a cat. I'm a beekeeper. She has chickens. And then there's all the critters. We live in the woods, so tons of deer and raccoons and eagles, and we have orcas. Not that they're around all the time, but you see them from time to time.
It's pretty special.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you really respect and value your natural surroundings.
Yeah, deeply.
Yeah.
It's what I do when I'm not on the road. I'm always outside.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not practicing and I'm not recording, I'm hiking or fishing or camping or walking. And Jolene and I were just in Joshua Tree last week. That's a perfect. And it was so funny because we're in Joshua Tree and we're both like, oh man, this is fantastic, like amazing, so powerful. And then we went to Palm Springs. It was like, ugh. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny because most of our friends go to Palm Springs and just hang there. And for us, it was like, there's just nothing, I love cities and enjoying being in Minneapolis. I love when I'm in Chicago or New York and I do the things. I eat the pastrami in New York. I do the things, but and I like museums and so forth, but beyond that, I prefer to be in nature.
How do you maintain the connection with music when it's also the thing that pays your bills?
It's tricky. I mean, because, I talk to people about this because often, especially when I was a little younger, when I was kind of had the young dads, like a lot of people had kids, and they were like, oh, like dad would have a couple of beers, and they'd be like, what's it like to be a guitar player? What's it like to be on the road? And I'd be like, oh, it's amazing. I said, but keep in mind that this is the thing I'm maybe the most passionate about in the world. So when people mess with it, you're messing with my spirit and my heart. And I feel very like, it's a very kind of a dangerous duality because, as an example, so, when I started having some vocal problems a few years ago, and I think what people didn't understand was that it wasn't just there was the fear of economic, like, oh crap, how am I going to make a living if just theoretically I couldn't perform? But the biggest thing was communion with whatever you want to call it, like a higher power, like this other thing. Like for me, when I sing, I just feel this connection to this bigger thing that's liberating. And so doing that and trying to make a living with that is the classic paradigm that creates so much suffering for so many artists because unfortunately it's a very predatory culture and and there's just not honor around it. We don't live in a society where there's really a sense of honor around art, but definitely with music for sure.
Okay, so can you just say a little bit more about how you see that playing out? The lack of respect and honor for...
Well, so music's been commodified. My TEDx talk was kind of about the transformational power of music. Music, and I mentioned this, that's the gist of my talk. The best part of the whole talk was there's one moment where I said, historically in transformative moments, like say you're in church, whatever church, you're in the synagogue, you're in the mosque, wherever you are, there's a moment where the preacher stops preaching and the choir sings. And that's the transformational moment. So music is maybe the most important thing in the world. If you really think about it, through ritual, it really is transformative. And so in modern times, we've just cheapened it to where, first of all, the main thing that people associate with music, I'd say a typical thing is selling something, or they come to a club and there's just this, like even last night, I'm watching this lady, I think Marlene, I'm probably making her name up, and she's singing, she's an opera singer, and it's just like, I just want to weep, and I want to break things, and I want to make love to the world, and everything, I feel all the feelings because there's this beautiful, beautiful moment. And I think that people have lost touch with themselves. So when there's a moment that's this powerful, they don't even know it's happening, and they're missing it because we're so, so desensitized to what we actually are as humans. So it's frustrating because there's like, you just see these people, and I think we're all couch potatoes now. So we sit there and we're eating our Cheetos, watching The Voice, watching these people like literally just pour their heart out, and then, oh, that person's okay, and the next person comes on like, oh, that person's all right. Like they have no idea the amount of spiritual energy, not even talking talent. I'm not even talking like if someone's good or not good. It's just what it is to really open up. And for many people, they've never done that in their life. They have no idea what it is to be that intimate to a group of people. I mean, how many people can even, you're a therapist. How many people can even openly talk about their feelings to one person?
Right.
And singing and playing music, if you're really doing it and you're truly present, talking about your feelings to the whole world. It's a very vulnerable space, and it's a very honorable space, and it's being treated with a lack of honor.
Thank you for describing that. I really feel that from a lot of the musicians I work with in therapy.
I'm sure you do.
Who express the same sentiment and really, I think, struggle with that. You use the word intimate. So there's an intimacy about, and a vulnerability, of course, to performing or sharing what you've also created. So even, when it's your work and then you're using your body.
Yeah, there's a lot of collateral damage. I watched my friends literally fall off cliffs, drugs and alcohol, major mental issues, addiction, sexual addiction, drug addiction, resentment. I mean, I'll put it, and I know a lot of people, so I'm talking people. There is every single songwriter in the world is brokenhearted. Because there's nothing no matter how much success you get, no matter how much recognition, it doesn't stop the desire that makes somebody really want to write a song is based in connection, and it's based in the need for communion. And so you're never going to have that filled. And so the very nature of the endeavor is a not failed because it succeeds, but there's a failure, and you mitigate those failures through drugs and alcohol and through finding ways to soothe the pain. And that's just the truth. And I didn't want to believe it, but now staring back on something, I know it's a fact, And so that's part of why I'm so fierce about my advocacy for musicians and mental health.
Yeah, so you do major advocacy work on behalf of musicians through your organization. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so my organization is called SMASH, and we are a regional nonprofit that provides, our initial mission was to try to provide wellness, so prevent major catastrophic illness, but then we recognized very quickly that the big holes were mental health and dentistry, because even with the ACA, most musicians have lower level packages, or they have somewhat underwritten packages, so mostly don't include dental. And then mental health just was, you're of course you're going to agree with this, but it's a lot of people don't realize that everybody in the world should be in therapy. Seriously, some of us have better friend networks than others, and it is helpful to do that. Some of us are pretty good about self-regulating, but it's still, you have to have somebody to talk to. And we realized in the musical community that, people were just a mess and are a mess and need a lot of help.
Well, I think, as you were saying, musicians are really disenfranchised.
Yeah.
And so on so many different levels, let alone the fact that you're very much putting your whole self out there in your work, and you're not separate from that.
No, you're not. Yeah, you're the piece of meat on the shelf.
Right.
The one of the things I've actually working on, it's funny because for me, one of my issues was my flexibility. I've become too flexible because I'm so good at working around other people's. So as an example, after a show, when I come down to play all these shows in Texas, I'll come out and talk to my fans. At the end of the night, everybody's super riled up. They've seen hopefully a great show, and they've had a few drinks. I'm pretty used to being fondled after the show. Like, I'll have some drunk lady just grab my ass, and it doesn't even bother me. I'm not turned on by it. I actually, if I were to really think about it, I actually hate it. But I'm so used to this that it's part of just the job. And I was like, I had a moment where I was like, wow, that's really messed up. Because I'm so open, I feel the same thing. So what I'm working on is actually creating some better boundaries for myself, and being a little bit less flexible, and actually being willing to say, especially to a fan, which is something this is a very complex relationship, because to say like you're being an asshole, or you're like, you need to respect my boundaries, because one of the things that musicians, artists go through because they're public figures is everybody has an opinion on you about everything, and as a public figure that's constantly trying to survive, you want that to be a good opinion. So you try to be as cool, but nonetheless, you could be the coolest person in the world, and you're still going to have somebody like, oh, I ran into Ian, and he was a total asshole to me, and of course, there's no sense of, you're just public property, so you have a very wide group of people judging you.
Well, we can never control other people's perceptions.
Nope, you can't.
And it's the same with performance. You can feel like you nailed it, and everyone in the audience will have had a different experience of that same performance.
I have a funny story about that. I used to be very, we would tape every show and immediately listen to it to get better, which can be a good exercise. And anyhow, we would always argue. Like, I'd be like, oh, that was a fantastic performance. My drummer would be like, oh, we were terrible. And then the bass player, so every night. We had this one show in Austin. It was our homecoming show, sold out, huge, the biggest venue we'd ever played in Austin, and we sucked. Everyone in the band was like, the first time we'd ever agreed. It was a terrible show, and so we were back in the dressing room just kind of commiserating. And then our girlfriends and friends come back, and they're like, "Oh my God, you guys, you're on another level. You're playing." We all just, I remember looking at Buck and just going, "Wow," that my keyboardist at the time, and just going, "This is crazy," you know, because we had it in it, just, you know, what you give and what people get. So I've let go of a lot of that, and so I just kind of show up and do my best to be me, and then I can't control. Sometimes I'll just be like, blah, 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 and people are like, "Oh my God." And other times I'm like nailing it on a deep spiritual level and nobody cares. I have no control.
Yeah. So with Smash, kind of going back to that, was your decision to co-found the organization, how much of that was self-motivated by what you saw was lacking?
Yeah, well, what happened was it was actually my own need. My wife got a new job. You know, I was 47 at the time, so my insurance is super expensive. Both my parents have died of cancer, so my insurance was crazy. So she was like, "You should get health care through HAM in Austin." And so I called my friend Renee at HAM. She was the ED at the time, and I said, "Hey, Renee, can I, you know, I tour at Austin, my booking agency, my band." And she goes, "Well, you could, but I mean, you don't really live in Austin." And so I said, "Well, okay, well." She goes, "Just find something up there. I mean, it's Seattle, you gotta have it." And so I look around, and there was nothing. And it was kind of eye-opening to me that, you know, there were no resources. And so same time I was seeing I had a South by Southwest where I was waiting for Alex Chilton to show up from Big Stars, one of my favorite bands, and he died. He literally died of an abscessed tooth. He had a heart attack, and he, you know, I was like, Alex Chilton died because of lack of health care. That's insane. And then, you know, there are friends of mine up in Seattle Seattle's a weird town because it's a music town, but it's not like Austin. There's a disconnect. It's very, very kind of post-punk, so it's very like anti-establishment. Whereas in Austin, it's less. Austin's more, you got Willie Nelson, you got, you know, the Vaughn brothers, you got all these kind of Lyle Lovett, you know, so it's not so counterculture. I think Seattle's Mudhoney, Nirvana, you know what I mean? So it's taken a while to create a synergy with the town. And so I guess I started to realize that there was a real lack. And it's been a huge uphill battle. I mean, we're gaining a lot of traction, but the conversation I keep having with people, like I sit in rooms with these venture capitalists and tech guys, and just their lack of awareness of, and just kind of like their arrogance of because they're good at what they do, and they have no idea what it takes to be a successful musician, or even just a musician. And so I have to basically tell them, like, actually, no, we're not staying up all night doing cocaine and, you know, having sex with everybody. We're actually practicing. When you're staying up all night doing coke and having sex, we're you know, I'm practicing, you know, 6 hours, 8 hours a day at 54. You know, this is a commitment. To be a real musician is a really serious commitment, and it's exhausting because I'm telling this story over and over and over, and I'm trying to get people to realize that it's a lot of effort and energy and intention to do what we do. So it's taken its toll on me, actually, as an individual, because the energy to try to, it's very Sisyphean, however you say that word. I feel like Sisyphus.
I think that's right.
It's just kind of like pushing the boulder.
Yeah.
And I love doing it. I'm inspired to do the work, but it is exhausting.
You've talked a lot in more recent years about things going on vocally for you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's such an interesting thing. Well, I'll start to say I would have never, ever wished it had happened to me. And ironically, when I started Smash, I had no health issues at all. And that's why I did it, because I was like, okay, I can do this. And then I started having these throat issues. And I've always had, I'd call like a kind of a sensitive voice, just because I use it in a lot of different ways. And so I started, having major throats. It like I'd lose my voice and I wouldn't get it back.
Okay.
And then I started having these weird things, and the medical condition that I have is called spasmodic dysphonia, which is basically a tightening of the vocal cords. And it's a neurological condition that's based in the vagus nerve system. And they know all the stuff, but they don't treat the neurological condition. They treat it as a physiological condition, which is, as you can imagine, it's like treating a cold by treating a runny nose. It doesn't solve the problem.
Symptoms of the bigger issue.
Yeah, so what I've been doing is diving into, obviously, therapy, awareness of, like I was saying, awareness of myself, energetic awareness, and nature welcomes me. I have a friend group of people that I've surrounded myself with that see me and value this version of me, and I feel good with it. So that's kind of my own thing. So I'm very vigilant about that right now.
It sounds like it's the way that it's making it work for you. Do you think something shifted for you with the new diagnosis?
Yes.
Is that a turning
Yeah,
point?
that's why I said it was, I would have never wished, because I had to do this work that I was kind of like, my best friend died 2 years ago and of drugs and alcohol, and he was my collaborator and it broke my heart.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And I just saw, because he was a mess, and I loved him for his messiness, because he was a beautiful, open soul. And I really started to recognize that despite that I didn't want to live like him and I'm not going to be a drug addict, there was something about him that was beautiful and special. And I was like, when I started having this thing with my voice, I was just like, this is my life. This is my life. I have one life to live, and I have to live it the way that I want and do the things that I believe in. And so much of what I was getting from the society around me, I started to really see as, wow, these are just broken people prescribing broken prescriptions, and these are not healthy things. And I'm fortunate because I live in a community that's a very healthy community. It's a very, Vashon, where I live, is a very progressive, actually that's not the word I want to use, progressive is a loaded word. It's a very empathetic community that's kind, it's thoughtful, it's caring. And so I have a lot of good models in my community, and we have somebody, like, for instance, there's Michael Mead, who's he's kind of I don't know what you call him. He's an older wise man. He's written a bunch of books on men and how to live in society. And so he's a mentor of mine, and I get to go, hey, Michael, I was just on tour and this happened. What do you do? And so I'm fortunate. But the thing that I'm also trying to do is I really want, one of my biggest goals in the last couple of years is to really advocate for men. And I believe that there's a new dawning of male energy right now. I think there's a new version of what it is to be a man. I think that men are, and I think the term toxic masculinity needs to be put aside, because I think toxic masculinity is actually a byproduct of the necessity of men to protect their families for thousands of years. And I think we're finally coming to a place where men can start to discard that and actually be open, vulnerable, sensitive people. Whereas 2 generations ago, if you were too sensitive, you literally were going to die. Well, 3, 4, a little further back, but you know what I'm saying? So it's taking a while. And so this is all interconnected, like taking care of ourselves and really, and helping. I really want to help shepherd men through this time of shift to a more feminine energy, and also the work on race equity and all the stuff that's going on. It's a very beautiful time, but it's a very challenging time, and I'm seeing a lot of men being lost in that shift, and a lot of good men that are actually advocates for all these things, I think, are being left behind. So that's kind of, I think, if I'm able to do anything next, that would be the thing I'd like to do after Smash.
Yeah, great. I really like the way that you framed openness, and I think that we actually agree on that. Therapy and the roots of psychology and the very individual idea of that aside, I think that it's really critical, actually, in the way that you framed it. Actually, I think does challenge the tortured part. And so if you're talking about vulnerability and true connection to yourself and honesty in order to connect to anyone else.
Yeah.
I picture it as there's your connection with your higher power that you're talking about in order to really know who you are, to share that with the world.
Yeah. But it can be torturous because we live in as I said, a perverse society. So the nature of being, like, just as an example, being a sensitive man kind of sucks.
Yeah.
You get a lot of shit for it. Everybody gives you shit. Like, a perfect example, the woman that I started Smash with, who's one of my dearest friends, Jackie Ryle, head counsel for the Gates Foundation. Badass. We meet, and I'm me. This is me. This is how I talk. And we were just talking a couple of weeks ago, and she goes, it's funny because when I first met you, she goes, I didn't trust you. She goes, I was looking for your angle. She goes, because in the philanthropic world that I live in, men that talk about soul and vibey stuff, they're predators. They use it as a bargaining piece to defeat people. And I was like, wow, Jackie, that is dystopian. That's crazy. And I'm like, it's so hard. I mean, I said, it's so hard because, we're really good friends now and we need each other. And it took you this long to get past what you thought was a facade of me to just become my friend. I mean, I'm glad we're friends, but that's unfortunate that it took that long. And I think that's the society that we live in. And so the tricky thing about being open, maybe where the tortured artist comes from, is that the openness is constantly, you're berated for it. You're just constantly taking crap for that, and it sucks. And so I end up I'm mad. I'm angry a lot of the time. I was angry this morning when I came. I'm pissed. I'm tired of it. And I'm like, I just want to go out in the world and just like knock the crap out of people and just be like, what the frick is wrong with you? Like, stop fucking everybody, or, just be cool.
Yeah.
So I'm angry. So that's the tortured artist. You spend your life Jolene will be like, God, why are you so angry? And I'm like, well, because this is what I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And I think the anger for me is the healthiest way I think anger is actually, if it's quick, is a healthy relationship with an emotion. If it's long and it turns into bitterness, that's a different emotion. So I am not bitter, but I am angry.
Anger is just a part of being human, which you're talking about. And if you're going to be real, you better be angry.
Yeah, well,
You're going to experience
I guess I'm
that.
real.
Yeah. As a musician, making a life on the road often, and you've talked about how to stay healthy on the road, what that looks like for you. What do you want to impart on other musicians who are looking at and considering and maybe romanticizing the idea of that lifestyle?
I'm going to answer with something that's not exactly the answer to your question, which is the first fundamental thing in being a musician and an artist is you have to be yourself, period. Because typically, if whatever you do, like for me when I was a young guitar player, it's like, oh, you can be the next Stevie Ray Vaughan. Well, there's your path. Okay, do you take that path? You could, but if you're a sentient being, you're going to be miserable. So you have to walk your own road. You have to follow your own thing. And once you do that, you start to build up a coalition of people who have your back. And so what I have in my career that's, I think, somewhat unique is I have a absolutely, I can feel the world has my back. And it protects me. And I built that because I've always been myself. So that's the most important thing. But exercise, all that stuff is more like just mitigating the day-to-day stuff. But the biggest thing is building a society around you that is based on truth so that people see you for who you are. And when you come to a town, when I come to Minneapolis or I come to wherever, I never feel alone. I can feel that people love me and I can feel that there's an intention towards good towards me. And that is what allows me to be away from my family.
Yeah. So what do places like host cities or venues need to know in order to support musicians?
Well, the United States has a long way to go. It's really pretty terrible. You go to Europe, like any band goes to Europe and they're like, oh my God, we went to Europe and they had, sandwiches backstage when we got to sound check, and you're like, it's sad, right? It's sad. I mean, it's like, well, what I will say is whenever a venue opens, I remember when the House of Blues started in Boston, and they would do that. You'd get there, and there'd be food backstage, and people were nice to you, and you're like, so bands want to play there, and then the venue does well. Treat musicians like people that, make sure that your staff's not jaded. Make sure that you are treating these people like the magicians they are. They're people that, you don't have to even like them all as far as their music, but, they're all bringing something.
Yeah.
And just honoring the space. When you create, when you come into a ritual, if you came into a church, for instance, and you walked through the door of the church and the preacher yelled at you when you walked through, you'd leave. Treat it like a church. Musicians are coming through to provide a communion and set that up. And then the audience, everybody is rewarded by that setup.
Yeah. Yeah. And then even on a larger level, the general public.
Well, yeah. We're all. I mean, one of the things that is. I mean, it's always funny when you say this. The deepest things always sound the pithiest, but we are all interconnected. There is nobody. Your action affects me, affects him, We're all interconnected, and so what we bring into the world has a huge manifestation on everybody else. And when you come, especially when you come into a venue, you leave a venue first. I mean, that was so interesting during the pandemic, and it pissed me off that the churches got to keep going, and of course the clubs did. And because for many, many, many people, we live in a largely atheistic society, for good or bad, whatever it is. Rock concerts are church for a lot of people. That is a fact. And people feel, I mean, I'm not just a performer, I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I go to shows.
Sure.
And I'm psyched. I feel like good and like happy, and I'm like, when I go to a great show, I come home and I feel great. I feel it's like going to church. You feel renewed, you feel forgiven, you feel like you were part of something. Like I was at, went to go see Paul McCartney with my son. It was so cool. And and I don't like big things. I always feel kind of dumb to me, like when a bunch of people do something at once, but like singing Hey Jude, I was crying. It was so beautiful. I was like part of this big movement, and I went home and I was, I was so psyched. I was so excited. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really special.
It was pretty special.
That's cool. I can imagine that.
Yeah.
Good. Well, you're going to share a song with us.
Yeah.
What is the song title?
It's a brand new song. I'm calling these family songs because I don't even know if I'm going to record them because they're very personal.
Okay.
And they're just kind of, I thought it would be a good song to play.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How did you get to this point with writing the song? What can you tell us a little bit about the songwriting journey?
I woke up 3 o'clock in the morning with the melody in my head, and my wife's a teacher, so we have a pretty big open floor plan in our house, and so I went downstairs and she was sleeping, and I was trying to play it quietly, and then she started talking to me from the bedroom upstairs because she could hear me, and just kind of the melody was just a beautiful thing because my wife just lost her mom, and we've gone through some, our kids are out of the house, and we're having this renaissance in our relationship that was needed. And we've been together for almost 26 years now, so it's pretty significant, and we've been through a lot. And I think part of my reorganization is I'm still very pretty free in the way that I think and feel, but I have a triumvirate energetically of my wife at the top of that. So I always think in my kids, and then because I love you, I love him, I have a real open heart for people that are close to me and present.
I can feel that.
Yeah. So, but I had to reorganize my energy a little bit, and so I kind of wrote this song as to her and to my family. So,
beautiful. Well, let's hear it.
I chose a light, a bright and bold light. My footsteps were certain, my compass was right, and I followed it faithful through the wilds of the world. Somewhere my vision grew bitter and cold. Somehow I lost something I couldn't hold. Somehow always just filling the holes. It leaves me tired and ragged. Oh, I walked among Teslas, so drunk with their power. I search for communion in the gossamer hours, where the promise is fragile and the consequence steep. Somehow my soul must remember the past, to forgive my burdens and forgive my attacks. But gratitude stays me with calm and resolve, and I know I belong there. Yes, I belong there. And thank you for loving me. I was not worthy of love. Thanks for your strength and your steely resolve. And thanks to your mama, 'cause I see her in you. Oh, and laying here watching you sleep, I see the peace overcoming the grief, and I find forgiveness in your love. It keeps me believing, and I believe in, keeps me believing, and I believe in. I chase the lights. Yeah.
It is beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. What a love song.
Yeah. It's a real love song. It's a love song. Because most love songs are lust songs. They're like
Yeah.
early love, where
Right.
you're like, I mean, they're great. Early love's great, but it's a whole different thing. Like, I'm so excited to have, you know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
fact that I actually like Jolene at this point in my life. It's like, and she likes me. It's kind of
Yeah.
a miracle.
Yeah.
I mean, because you have every reason to dislike somebody at that point, but you know.
Well, I feel like we're talking to you at such a transitional period
Yeah.
in your life, and it's
Yeah.
a real honor to see you at this point in your evolution.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm hoping to be of service to the world, because I feel like, you know, anyone on a journey feels like you can use your journey as part of the thing, because we're all on it. You know, there's no one that's not.
Right.
Even if they don't think they are, it's still, you're still on it. You know.
It's the thing we all have in common.
Yeah. Lay me in flowers, sweet magnolias, New Orleans style. Hey, and play me a funeral procession, second line rhythms, won't you walk me that mile? And find a tune for my hiding, and let me rest in there, yeah, rest for a while. Oh, and make a grand presentation. All of my family, yeah, remember my time.